Today on Family Talk.
Raising teenagers can be extremely difficult, as I can attest to personally with 2 daughters and a son of my own. But sometimes we as parents don't realize the tremendous amount of rejection and hurt our teens face daily. Hello, everyone. I'm Roger Marsh, filling in for Dr. James Dobson today and all this week here on Family Talk. Dr. Dobson is still in Israel, discussing with government officials the permanent move of the U.S. Embassy to the true biblical capital of the Holy Land, that being Jerusalem. While he is away, we have great programs to bring you. Today you will hear an exclusive conversation featuring Dr. Tim Clinton and Dr. Chap Clark, a conversation they recorded at the American Association of Christian Counselors Conference in Nashville, Tennessee this past fall. The two will discuss Dr. Clark's book, Hurt 2.0, and stresses to parents the importance of connecting and caring for their children when they need it most. Let's listen now to this insightful and informative interview on today's edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
Delighted to have our special guest in studio, Chap Clark. Chap, thanks for stopping by.
Great to be here.
Talk.
Thanks, Tim.
I want to say this to every parent listening right now. Every parent listening to our voice knows right now whether or not you're close to your son or daughter. You just know it. You know, I think God just wires it into us. Name your son. My son is Zach. Name your daughter. I have a daughter, Megan. And think about them just for a moment. You know whether or not you're close to them. Now listen to this statement. Every parent listening to our voice also knows when something's wrong. They know when they're not close. They can sense when their kids are in trouble. Chap, I don't think anything strikes fear more into the heart of a parent, a mom or a dad, when they know their son or their daughter is in trouble.
Right.
You spent your life basically focused on looking into the hearts and minds of today's teens, our kids. Chap, I just want to open up, basically the book here and just say, hey, pour into our lives. Help us understand, first of all, what are you seeing? What are the great challenges that our kids are facing?
Boy, what a great opening statement, because you forced all of us as parents to have to slow down a little bit. And when we do slow down and we do take a deep breath and ponder and think and consider our kids, that allows us to be a little more aware of the little tiny cues that they'll throw out there. But most of the time, by the time they hit about 14 or 15, they've learned how to at least bury those cues pretty deeply. And we as parents, when we are attuned, we can see it. But a lot of times we're going so hard and fast that we don't hardly see it. It's busy, it's distraction.
I remember Paul Tournier once said the statement, the busy, preoccupied parent misses many a cue or an opportunity to be in a key moment.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of it.
Well, sure. I think we all are. And it's getting worse as the years go by with the way technology is kind of taking over
But
for
our
everybody.
Kids are going through deep waters, Chap. It's not like how we grew up.
No, really
it's
different.
So different. The world's so different.
And mostly how it's different. And a lot of people have different kind of takes on this for whatever reason, whether it's psychologically or the brain studies or cultural studies. The more we really try to understand our kids, what we're beginning to see more coalesce of various different scholars in different fields is that as life becomes more complicated, more adults are trying to take care of themselves and need to, but oftentimes they miss out on the actual special needs that their kids have. And so adults are so running so hard and fast that as our kids grow up, they have so few adult relationships that they can trust. We've moved from fragmentation to what some are calling atomization, more and more isolated and lonely. But then we hand them technology at a young age. We hand them an extreme expectation on performance, whether it's sports or school or church or a whole lot of different places where we say, you really have to keep up and be the good kid because we are way too busy and we are way too consumed with all the things facing us as a family for us to have to slow down if you can't keep up. So keep up, kid. So even the best kids are running hard and fast. And as they run hard and fast without a whole lot of adult support, just to sit with them, to consider them, to sit on the curb, to turn off the video machine, to turn off the TV, throw the cell phones into a basket before dinner, our kids are having to keep up. And the problem with that is they don't have enough either brain development or social skill or people in their life for them to be able to navigate all the complexity that they face. You add to that the increase in technology and the pressures. They don't really know how to communicate well. They communicate in bursts. That means they don't actually connect very deeply with anybody anymore. They feel more and more isolated, and so their life is lived on the outside. Social pressures, and all of this increases with a heavy dose of bullying, leading to a lot of kids having a lot of struggles through their teen years and even into their young adult years. How's that for a preamble? We're ready to go?
I'm going to tell you, I saw a Facebook post recently, and it was a young man, and he simply put one statement out. It just said, I want to be understood. I just want someone to understand me, love me.
Right.
And his dad responded to the post saying that, he was loved deeply by the Lord, etc. But here's this kid in his own, almost like trapped in his own mind, his own heart, feeling rejected or whatever, dejected by whoever, whatever in his life. And I was just in my own moment praying for this boy and saying, God, it's like that lost boy syndrome for a moment. He's in a spin. We've all gone there.
Right.
When you see this, and what's troubling, Chap, you talked about a lot of issues. Speak to us as mom and dad real quick about what you think really throws kids sideways. What is it that just seems to just absolutely knock the wind out of them and put them into a tailspin? Is it not making the team? You hear what I'm saying? Is it being bullied? Is it not having a close relationship with mom and dad, or they split up or something? I mean, I know there could be so many factors, but just,
I think at the very core, what you're trying to get at, that's underneath all of that stuff, obviously the larger the traumatic external experience, like families breaking up or abuse or addiction or a whole lot of other stuff that kind of come into play. At the core, the world that we've created for our kids is so pressure-packed to stay inside the lines of performance. 25, 30, 35 years ago, most of the people listening to us, our experience of performance was still stressful to a certain level, so we tell kids we understand, we get it. But now it's either you are totally inside the box, you are keeping up with grades, you're doing what you're supposed to do at sports, everybody likes you, you're a good kid, or if you deviate from that even a little, you're considered somehow an outlier, an at-risk kid, a problem. We have such a regimented understanding for kids to grow up that the number one word is the pressure of growing up in a culture without the social capital, the social experience of people just making their place safe. Most kids, when they hear me talk to their parents or youth leaders or whoever, they go, that's exactly it. I'm under incredible stress. I'm 13. I don't get it. I don't know who to talk to about it.
Yeah, and or they don't know how to talk about it, too. It's the attunement thing.
Oh,
so
yeah,
everybody's too busy, or they want to have one of those moments where they get it out and get heard. You can hear that young boy, just somebody hear me. Hear what's going on inside of me. Somebody see me. Dad,
most of them
Anybody
can't even
see me.
articulate. I mean, that kid that wrote that on Facebook, that kid's in touch with their emotions. Most kids, especially boys, cannot do that.
Let's keep going deeper here for a moment, because I really want to speak. I mean, this is in my heart. I'm telling you, these kids are in my heart. I see them on the ball field. I see them in the stands. I see them just wrestling, searching, struggling everywhere. Chap, kids hurting themselves. This self-injury kind of pandemic that's going on. Do we even talk teen suicide? We have to, because it's soaring, and everybody gets afraid to talk about it, because you feel like if you talk about it, somebody's going to start thinking about it, and they're going, next thing you know, they're going to commit suicide on us or something. Chap, but what are you seeing? What's driving our kids to that point, that level of desperation?
The experience of the stress of multiple agendas growing up and multiple expectations. And almost every kid feels like, if I'm not absolutely careful with every step along the way from the time I'm a little tiny child, I'm going to completely lose it and fall apart. And so that stress is bottled up inside of almost every young person today. It shows itself first, usually in depression or isolation. Another step after that is a self-injury, which is not hurting myself. It's trying to feel something, as you know. I mean, that whole thing of self-injury. And the ultimate step towards suicide attempts and ultimately suicide is coming from that same place where I'm so bottled up, I'm so tied up inside that I can't break free of that. I've got no option for myself. Suicide is obviously a huge issue, but we got to step back a couple of steps of depression, stress, performance anxiety, some of those things that end up leading to self-injury and ultimately to suicide.
Chap, I know you're concerned also about the voices our kids hear.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at their digital device,
right,
and the level of influence that's coming to them through social media and everything, they're just getting pounded. I mean, the grind's on. It's just constantly. They're being instructed on values, priorities, sexuality, love, God, everything. It's coming from just a million different directions. And if you have a child too, and I want moms and dads to hear this from who may be a little different than you are personality-wise. Maybe their hobbies or interests are different than yours. You don't have a lot of alignment, and you struggle with, let's use that word, attunement, where you're attuned to your son or your daughter, and you're in this frantic pace. You're right. It's a breeding ground for isolation, for loneliness, to get lost in your own mind and to try to figure out and solve all this stuff. And then you throw on top of it, let's talk about relationship injury. Maybe it's a breakup or a good friend who betrays you, or something happens where a teacher just, ostracizes you, or, picks on you, sets you out as an example. A coach turns on you and ignores you and says, you're not playing anymore. You're not on my team. I'm just creating this thing, Chap, because I think there are a lot of mom and dads listening out there. They're worried about their son or daughter who's slipping into that kind of a place, and they want somebody to speak life, to be life-giving for a moment. What am I going to do? How do I rescue this whole thing? What do we turn?
Well, almost every family at some level, if they're attuned, faces this at some point with at least one of their kids, if not all of them, in some way or another. And the necessity to try to do something jumps up for all of us. Any parent's desperate. I mean, now I'm a grandparent, so we're moving into that slowly. The idea of trying to fix it by getting an expert, throwing them into another event or experience is usually just a Band-Aid on a deeper wound. What really has to happen, if we're going to speak life into this, what our role as parents is to first be the ones that model healthy relationships with each other if we're in a married relationship, and then create a safe space at home that allows for a culture of free and open conversation, so a kid can allow some of that stuff that's bottled up inside of them to come into conversation.
Maybe it's anger. I mean, and maybe we don't feel comfortable, but we need to give them an opportunity to express themselves.
They have to. And the kids that have long-term faith, actually, it's a little bit of a side, but are the ones that were encouraged even to push back against the values of their parents in conversation. Not necessarily in behavior, but at least to say, well, what about this? Or I kind of think this. So when a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 19-year-old is trying to figure out, how do I navigate all this stuff coming at me? The parents, our role is primarily to create this safe space of respectful conversation that we engage our kids wherever they are so that they can hopefully trust us. Now, a bigger issue is parents never can do enough to undercut and to diminish the power of the voices and the powers around our kids. We have to create a culture of community for our kids as well as a culture of conversation.
Chap, the number one thing most experts agree that still make teens happy is a great relationship with mom and her dad.
Right.
Sometimes we don't believe that because our kids tend to kind of turn away from us and try to get their direction and value and stuff from their peers. There's that part of growing up that's going on, or they don't think mom and dad is hip or in touch with what's going on, but yet at the core they still want that structure. They want that relationship, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And it is parents, but also research is not strong enough, but it's coming, that because of the unique dynamics of being both a parent and being a support presence, leading toward a trajectory of friendship when they become adults, that creates so many dynamics, especially in a changing culture, that our kids, yes, are desperate for their parents, but they are also desperate for at least a couple of other adults that also come alongside them, not to pour into them, but to actually learn how to listen to them. That's what's lacking. Who actually sits down and listens to a kid? Who creates a space where a kid can actually feel safe enough to explore the feelings and thoughts that they have? And even with their parents, yes, parents' dynamic, that's really important, and kids are desperate for that, but still, that's never enough. They gotta have somebody else, and usually 2 or 3 more. And that's what's eroded in our culture.
Chap, I really like that. I want to really push on that a little bit. But
Great.
Before we go there, I want to talk to mom and her dad for a moment, whose teen may really be in trouble. They're terrified. Chap, you I know you've written on, you speak a lot about self-injury, teen depression, suicide, and more. For those who are in those kind of challenges right now, reaching out and getting help, it's such a gift to the family.
Right.
If we'll just take a step. I think mom and dad sometimes think that they're a failure or what have you, and so they don't necessarily, they want to fix it on their own. I mean, these are our kids. We can straighten this out. Can you just speak to them for a moment about?
Yeah, that, and obviously both of us are so deeply committed to getting help from people that spend their lives trying to understand how we think and who we are. And especially those of us, if you love Christ, what does it mean to have Christians that walk with us? And we call that counseling. But it's actually the body of Christ in action. So we're not, I'll speak to the mom and dad step parent. You're not on your own. There are people that care and will help you walk through these horrible days and very difficult days. The worst thing that can happen, however, is to drop your kid off with a professional helper and think, whether it's the youth pastor for minor depression, or whether it's the coach who's really a great coach, or a new school, and that's all we do is just do the drop-off mentality of having somebody else affect our kids.
And then we're going to come by and pick them up.
Yeah, and people do that with counselors. Almost always a kid's sense of depression and loneliness and brokenness is related to the dynamics of the family system. So here's the thing, folks. If you are feeling like your kid's really struggling, you're not a failure, but you need help. And it's a good thing to go and be part of a healing process with your kid, because you got a long-term relationship with that kid. And to walk through it together where you're exploring whatever dynamics in your relationship, whatever's needed, don't be afraid to go any place that other Christians that can help you walk there. But don't think you just get your kids fixed. Because as our kids are struggling, we also need to walk alongside and struggle with them.
And I'm going to say this to you, mom and dad: the sooner the better. Mm-hmm. What we mean by that is
like now.
Like right now. The early detection and early response, it can save a lot of brokenness. It really can. And so look at that now in light of, and I want to go to this word community for a moment. I read about Project Orange. It was a thing in parenting that talked about mobilizing multiple influences in the life of a teen.
Yeah, and I've been working with Reggie since they started Orange.
Talk to us then. What's your meaning about community, parenting today? So mom and dad, the home, the ultimate responsibility rests right here. Okay, we know that. Our bond, our relationship, that attachment bond is so significant. But you can develop outside bonds that also can influence the trajectory. And getting your son or daughter aligned with a key leader out there can be everything.
That's exactly right. And actually, the gospel is very clear in the New Testament. As wonderful as the family system is, because we live in a fallen world, God makes it very clear that we are called to do this together. We are in life together as God has created, and God has redeemed his church. All the Pauline epistles are talking about the idea that you must be in love relationships and humble relationships of lifting one another up. And because adolescence wasn't around then, we have to realize that our kids need to be drawn into that. So if you love Christ and care about your kids, you need to include your kids in that Christian community so they feel nurtured and empowered by the body of Christ. And it's the greater family on earth that God has given us as we grow older as people. It's this kind of idea that church is really an isolated network of individual worshipers is not biblical. Biblically, we are really called to be in this thing together. What I call now an adoptive community or a mentoring community where we're caring for each other across the board. That's the best thing for your kids, is to be connected to others who truly love Christ and will love them and your family.
I'm thinking of an old baseball coach I had. His name was Marlo Desmond, and he would pick me up. He'd have his old pickup, one of them old Chevy pickups, the old ones, come blowing down the road, dirt road, pick me up at the farm, and he'd take me to baseball practice, and he was the coach. And he loved me like a son. He just said, boy, you can play ball. I want to help you play ball. I've loved that game since I was a boy. And I'll never forget Marlo and just his kindness and his speaking into my life. It was a gift to me. My dad and I, my dad was the kindest man I've ever met in my whole life, Chap. But we call him Danny Murtaugh, who was an old Pittsburgh Pirates coach. Here comes Danny Murtaugh down to get you. It meant everything. Seriously, I'm thinking of a youth pastor. I'm also thinking about spiritually connecting here for a moment. You know that verse in the Psalms that says, though my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will deliver me up. Boy, if your son or daughter could just believe, ultimately at the core of their heart, how much they're loved by God. And it's a gift, by the way, that's often caught, not necessarily taught.
And it's caught via God's people. I mean, the way the Lord has chosen to love us primarily is in and through his people as well as by his Spirit. So it's the beauty of what we've been given in the body of Christ, even with all its warts and all our just insane pathologies. At least we have each other in the Spirit at the center of that.
Chap, fantastic conversation. I want to close like this. I remember an old pop song that used to go like this. What I like about you. And when I think
I can
about
do the
that
clap
song,
now if you want me to.
there you go. Chap, what I like about you as you look at your son, or maybe as you look at your daughter, reframing and kind of cultivating and growing that and enjoying that. And by the way, spending time together. There's something about your presence when you're really in their world, not bringing them into your world. When you participate in their world, you learn things about them, you connect at a different level, they connect back with you at a different level, and God begins to sort of grow a special seed. Yeah, even in the midst of great brokenness, you can see God do great work.
That's fantastic. And the word compassion is what I try to talk about a lot. Compassion comes from two Latin words, cum pati, which means to suffer with. To demonstrate compassion is what it means to really love our kids. That means to come alongside and be listeners as well as guides.
Wow.
And embrace.
In pain, what it's like. I'm sorry that happened, son. You know that?
As a dad, learning it over the years, just trying to walk alongside my kids as they've gotten older. It's taken me a long time to learn these lessons. And by the time you hit grandparenthood, as you're close to maybe, it's hopefully is where the Lord's really helped us on that one. But that's the key, is you're going to get through this by God's grace, parents. But as you go through it, exhibit that grace, demonstrate that compassion for your kids. Come alongside, suffer with.
Our special guest again today has been Dr. Chap Clark, author of Hurt 2.0 and more. Look him up, Google him. He's quite a man. He's a great dad and grandpa. And it's been a delight having you here on Family Talk.
Thanks, Tim. Really fun to see you.
And to all you out there who've been listening to Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk, we love you. We appreciate your support of the ministry. I know Dr. Dobson sends his regards. Thanks for listening.
Well, we hope today's interview on this edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk has deeply impacted you. And if you are a parent, I hope that this conversation helped you to realize the pain and pressure your teens and all teens experience on a regular basis. If you or someone you know has a teenager who's struggling with addiction or even depression that stems from the hurt that Dr. Clinton and Dr. Clark were talking about today, we urge you to call our friends at the American Association of Christian Counselors. That number is 800-526-8888. 8673. They'll be able to help you and your child through whatever situation your family is facing right now. Again, the number for the American Association of Christian Counselors is 1-800-526-8673. You can also go online to AACC.net to find a Christian counselor near you or to read any of their helpful articles and the other information that they have posted there as well. Again, that web address is AACC.net. Finally, as you may know, Family Talk is completely supported by our listeners. We greatly need your financial support as we continue to fight for our Christian beliefs on all fronts. You can make a donation securely online when you go to drjamesdobson.org. You can make a gift over the phone when you call toll-free, 877-732-6825. Again, our toll-free number, 877-732-6825. Thanks so much for your prayers and your financial support. And remember to join us again next time right here for another edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
Family Talk is not associated with Focus on the Family.